fine students. Here I am with a different class. Different not in subject, different in style. So let's know about today's class. I hope that you are enthusiastic to know about today's class. So today I will be giving you the visual representation of the story which I took up in my previous class. That was The Adventure of the Blue Carbuncle. And I want you to make this story fixed in your mind, because this is a novel even, and you may get in your higher classes, right? So it's better that you fix up the story in your mind. And here I'll be giving you the visual representation. I have got up with some pictures of the story in a sequence. What you will be doing, you will be observing those pictures, and you will be developing the story in your own words. And I wish that you will come up with your answers. Don't let me down, students. I know that you can do it, and you will do this homework, right? Homework in a different style. So now observe the visual representation. So here I have taken up first of all author of the story, right? And then this is the first slide I have made for you. The next one is getting this. Yes, I hope that you are able to get that who are sitting there and what are they doing, right? And the next one is this one. Hope you got this thing also. Here also you got it, right? So getting the words in your mind, getting the sentences in your mind, what to write, right? This is another right. Here, able to get it? Here even, got it? How to end the story? So here, this is the last slide of your visual representation. I hope you liked it and the story is fixed in your mind. And when you'll be writing it in your own words, then it will be even permanently fixed, right? So now we'll be shifting on to the exercises so that we complete our chapter, right? Here is your question A. That is question A. Choose the correct option and write on the blank. Here you are given MCQs and then you will be choosing the best option. Watson thought he was interrupting Holmes because he was... I hope that the answer is there in your mind. Because he was examining something, and here we have this in the option 2. So this is the right answer, right? So next we have Peterson was left with the goose and the hat because... So what was the reason? Yes, because the man was scared because of his uniform, as he was a commissioner and he was in that uniform. So he was scared of that. You remember that? So this is the right option. Peterson's uniform scared them all away, right? So the next one is, I must be very stupid, Holmes, for I am quite unable to follow you, Watson. So this is the wording of Watson. So now here what he says, that I must be stupid. So here the options are, couldn't understand what Holmes said, not right. Couldn't follow Holmes because he was too fast, that even doesn't go well. Don't understand how Holmes came to his conclusions. Is it seeming right? Yes, it is seeming right, because he was quite confused that with such a tattered object like hat, how will he make his deductions, isn't it? So this is the right option here. Next one is Holmes realized that the hat was connected to a crime when the options are given, and I am sure that you got the answer. When Peterson brought the gem in, that time he got to know that it is connected with the crime because he read about that gem in the newspaper, right? So this was the correct answer. Peterson brought in the gem, right? So now next we have Ryder had stolen the gem and then what he did? After stealing, he put the blame onto the plumber. So that is the best option. Then blame the plumber, right? So this was your part A. So now part B, we need to answer the questions. That is, question number 1 is, the man is clever, middle-aged and uses lime cream in his hair. How did Holmes come to these conclusions? So how could he guess it? Even Watson was confused. How could he guess it? So here, development of an answer would be like this. Holmes makes the assumption of cleverness by the size of the head on which that hat was worn, with the idea being a larger head means more in it. The more is the size of the head, the more is the brain of that person, right? The remnants of cut hair inside the brim of the owner and the fact that he uses lime cream as well represents that he is a clever and middle-aged man, right? So this was the answer. So next question. Why did Mr. Baker come to see Mr. Holmes? So now what was the reason Mr. Baker come to see him? Because Sherlock Holmes gave an advertisement in the newspaper so that the person, the owner of that hat and goose come and claim his things. So that is why. So here is your answer for this question. Mr. Henry Baker came to Baker Street in response to adverts placed by Holmes in the newspapers. These adverts asked for Mr. Baker to retrieve his lost possessions, that is goose and a hat, right? So this was the answer. So here question number 3 is, this may save us a visit to Brixton Road. Why did Sherlock Holmes say this? Because when he was planning to move to Brixton Road to meet that lady who was selling that goose, Oxshot, isn't it? So, but that even appeared at the moment. So then he said these words, isn't it? Having just found out who had sold the geese, that is Mrs. Oxshot of Brixton Road, Holmes and Watson observed a man asking the poultry dealer Breckenridge about the geese that had come from Mrs. Oxshot. Thus it was reasonable to assume that this was the man that they were after, right? So this was the answer. Then next one is, trace the gem's journey in the following flow diagram. So here you need to add on some events so that you complete the story. So what is the scene? The gem is stolen from the hotel. First this incident happened. Then the thief puts the blame on innocent plumber. This I have taken up. And then this was the blank. After that, the real thief goes to see his sister. Who was the thief? Ryder. Who was the sister of Ryder? Oxshot. So now what happens next? The gem finally reaches Peterson and Sherlock Holmes. Right? So this is the sequence. So next we have part D. That is question 1. How do you think Mrs. Oxshot Oxshott must have felt when she heard about Mr. Ryder's involvement in the theft? So here, what is your opinion that how she would have felt? Obviously, she would have felt so bad that his brother had been involved in such a crime of stealing that gem. So that even the same thing even happened in Oxshott case, as even we would have been at her place, we would even have felt it the same way. So then the answer, Oxshott must have felt very bad when she heard about Mr. Ryder's involvement in the theft, because she didn't expect this from her brother and had lost her trust from him. Mrs. Oxshott had felt so sad to know the reality of her brother, right? So here was the answer. Then we have second part. What do you think happened to Mr. Ryder in the end? So what do you think? What had happened? Ryder is the thief who is found to have stolen the blue carbuncle in the adventure of Blue Carbuncle. However, at the end of the story, after Ryder has confessed himself and begged for the mercy and begged, God help me, God help me, either you can use begged for mercy, Holmes seems moved by compassion and tells the man to get out of his flat without making any move to prosecute Ryder, without doing anything to send him to prison, right? So this was the answer of question number 2. So now next we have description. We need to describe these characters in the story in some sentences. In 2 or 3 sentences it is written, but I have given some more sentences to enhance your language. Mr. Baker. So here Mr. Henry Baker is a tall, drunken and a very unknown man in the story. So we could not see him, right? And then more in the story, he has a major part in this story by just having the goose with the blue carbuncle, right? So this was all about, we got to know from the story. And then next we have Mr. Holmes. About him we can really write more. Sherlock Holmes is a private investigator who works from his home on Baker Street in the central London. A devoted pupil of crime studies, he is zealous believer in the powers, observation and deductive reasoning. Holmes is a typically unflappable and reserved, but on occasion he exposes a passionate creative side, right? So here was your answer for Sherlock Holmes. Unflappable means he was quite rigid, but occasionally he was expressing as a passionate person. The other way around, flip side, the other way around of the personality, right? Is our Dr. Watson. So for Watson you can speak more because he appeared in the story for more time. Watson is Sherlock Holmes' friend, assistant and sometime flatmate and the first person narrator of the story. He is described as a typical gentleman. Unlike Holmes, he is astute, although he fails to match his friend's deductive skills. Do you feel so that this is the right words I have chosen for his character? Yes, I hope that you agree with these words. So now Mr. Ryder. So here James, who was Mr. Ryder? Who stole that blue carbuncle, isn't it? James Ryder was an attendant at the Hotel Cosmopolitan in London. He stole the blue carbuncle, a precious jewel. Then he tried to blame the plumber for the theft, but Sherlock Holmes discovered the truth. This only we got to know about Mr. Ryder, right? Next is our Mr. Peterson. Peterson is very honest fellow and good guy. He tried to break through and protect the stranger from his assailants. When the man dropped his hat and his goose, Peterson brought them both to Sherlock, right? So here we got to know this character Peterson in the story, who was a commissioner even, which you even can add on, right? So with a hope to get your homeworks, I am dispersing the class for today. The rest we will do in the next class. Thank you.